As we move forward, or the next chapter as we go, that E series will remain, but you see we're now starting to introduce a ME, an M, and MA series, as well as it'll be somewhat of what you would call a facelift to the P series. So we'll go through that today. That'll really be a lot of our focus of what we're going to talk about. The large size C and V that many of you are used to and we're seeing great traction with are not going away. Those will remain. And then, of course, those specialty products being the X series high bright, and then the second generation that we're into as far as the UN series, of course, will not go away either. Dave will actually dig into some of those as we go through the presentation. So really the thought process behind this change, we really took your feedback and what you're telling us you need to be successful and what your clients are asking for or what your use cases are. And that's really what we baked into this. So we feel like we've taken that and we've taken it really firsthand to go back to our engineering team to develop what we're going to talk about today in this new generation of series. I know this is a little difficult to read, but bear with me here as we go through it. It really builds off of itself. We've got that E series at the very top that is now going to go to UHD resolution, and we've already seen that start to transition already. That will continue to transition as we go through the remainder of this year. And then you see the ME series, and what we really look at as good enough. Again, it's going to maintain that 16:7 rating as far as use case, but we're also going to start adding some feature sets into it. So now you would be able to take that ME series and put it into portrait mode to where, as we know, the E series couldn't do that. We're also, again, listening to that feedback from any of our programmers on the call. We're giving you full control capabilities. That was a large pain point that we saw with the E series as far as from the programming community, that they really wanted that full control capability. And we're adding the expandability. Next drop down, we give you the M series. Now we've gone to a 24/7 rated panel, and we're starting to introduce more of those feature sets that you guys are used to from NEC, like high haze. And you get everything that we talked about above. So portrait, full control, expandability. Again, these series will build off of each other. We drop down again. We're now into the MA series. Again, maintaining that 24/7. Now we start adding feature sets like wide color gamut, video output, the SpectraView control that we'll talk about in more detail. And then, of course, we're keeping that audio amp that many of you rely on for huddle type rooms or other applications to when we start talking about those value engineer capabilities. And then, of course, the P series, again, everything that we've talked about up to this point, but we're also going to give you that overall high brightness of 700 nits. That's really how the series is going to stack up, and we're going to deep dive a little further as we go forward. So again, just another overview of some of the features. I won't go through this completely, but some of the ones that really stand out to me are that ME series that we're giving you HDR capabilities. We're still maintaining that metal chassis, full control, the landscape and portrait seems to be a huge request. The M series going again, adding those temperature sensors and fans back in, adding that 49-inch diagonal series size panel back into the run, and then of course that high haze panel. And then all the way to the far right, MA and P series, really that 8K daisy chain that we're going to talk about today, I think is going to be very interesting for you guys as we move forward and what we're able to do with that capability.
Can I interrupt? There is a question. Sure. What's the difference between limited and full control?
So really it comes down to how our displays would talk to, and I'll pick on Crestron just because it's fresh in my mind. With the older E series, it had limited control to where you could power it on, you could do other simple functions, but a lot of times the programmers want to do what they call a keep alive. to where it goes out and talks to that display or that projector a repeated number of times through a day or through um, a set of events to make sure that it's running correctly and that it's on the right input. So with limited control, it really limited what features you could do as far as like keep alive and the health of the display or the projector, where when we go into full control, now the programmers can pull those devices just like they would any other device, and it really gives them more functionality and more control over the systems that they're designing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So E-Series, again, really going through the facelift as we talk today. Really the big change in this is going to be that UHD resolution. So again, most of this we've already talked about. Probably the things that stand out is, again, that UHD resolution as we move forward. And of course, that integrated ATSC NTSC tuner that many of you have come to rely on with that series. The new mainstream products. So really what we've talked about with those M-Series products. Here's some of the pictures that we've received and that you'll start seeing in some of our marketing material. Here is some other pictures actually with our engineering team. So you can actually see that SDM technology that we'll talk about later today and what that brings as far as the expanded control and capability. And then really maintaining those ADA requirements that really have become important, but still maintaining that metal chassis so that it's the rugged appliance that you're used to from NEC. Really important information. As we move forward with this series, the current series that could be rotated into portrait, currently you rotated those clockwise. As we move through these next generations, it'll actually be opposite and it's going to go into counterclockwise. So just keep that in mind. The flyer will be printed out and taped to every display, so it'll be there as a reminder. And then Dave is actually going to go through some other technology that are going to be built into these new series that will even help foolproof that, if you will, as we move forward. We'll start with ME series, and I apologize, my slide advance is lagged a little here, so just let me get all of these populated and we'll talk through them. Okay, so ME series 43, 50, 55, and 65. Again, all native UHD resolutions, 16:7 runtimes. 50,000 hour is the backlight life. And then, of course, we're giving you that expanded capability as far as SDM, as well as our Raspberry Pi or SoC solution. And we'll talk more about that as we continue the presentation as well. All right, going over to the M series. So again, 43, 49, 55, and 65. All UHD native resolutions as we've talked before. Same backlight life as far as that goes. SDM Raspberry Pi support as we've talked about before. And then again, starting to add those feature sets like HDR, USB setting copy. Dave will actually go through that shortly as well. We'll go through what that actually means and what it gets you as far as additional feature sets. Then we go into the MA series and the P series. So again, this will be limited to that 43, 49, and 55-inch sizes. Wide color gamut, high haze, really are the ones that stand out. Integrated audio amplifier, as well as the outputs. And again, that 8K support that we'll dig into further as we go. Again, same mechanical design as we've talked about. They really build off of each other as we go through these series. So now we're going to kind of get into the weeds a little bit with some of the new features that we're building into these series. So specifically with the MA and the P series, as we talked about, there's going to be a video output. So as many of you know, with DisplayPort 1.4, that really gives us some expanded capabilities of what we can do with what they call multi-stream transport. So as you see here in the graphic, we can take one 4K 60 MST stream through that DisplayPort 1.4. I can then link that to 4 displays, but I can give you 4 independent and separate sources. In this instance, talking about like menu boards. We really feel like this is going to change things up as far as how we can bring value to your projects and to your designs. Again, trying to give you the important feature sets built into these series to where you don't necessarily have to bring in an outside device, which we've had to do in the past to get solutions like this accomplished. So again, just expanding this a little further, we've talked about that 8K. So imagine being able to take a single 8K 60 signal source to a single screen, as well as being able to daisy chain that, as you see on the right-hand side. So really taking 4 displays, and it would be limited to 4 displays as we're being told by engineering, but giving you a full 8K 60 piece of canvas, so to speak, really across those 4 displays. So again, we feel like this is giving you extra tools in your toolbox. So when you're starting to look at those possibilities or those solution sets that you need for your upcoming projects, these things are starting to be built into the displays we're offering. And with that, Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Great job. I'm going to just kind of switch gears here a little bit and look at just the product from a sense that, I think a lot of us that we've been doing this for a while come across that question is, why do I need to buy a commercial display? And we run across it all the time. It's why we have our E-Series. We have an entry-level E-Series because that is the closest option that we have to what they could call a consumer display, but we commercialize it. And I think that's the big difference between a competitor that has a consumer line trying to go into commercial, and then a commercial company such as us having a entry-level model that can kind of go toe to toe with that. But I think we add some features in it that really make it a commercial display. And so I kind of put up this slide to look at it, highlight a couple of those features that we may not think of when we think, why can't I use a consumer television? So, brightness would be one thing. And I think through Adam, if you caught on kind of the different brightness levels that he mentioned, going from E to M to P, and same with our large format V and C, there's different, they get a lot they're brighter panels. So, most generally consumer televisions are under 300 nits. And that's in the center. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So again, we get into high ambient light situations, they may not perform well. So it's something that'd be one reason why I would shy away from a consumer, not just because it's a consumer, but because of the application of what we're asking it to do. The reflective properties of the screen, right? You heard Adam mention high haze, low haze. If you don't know what that means, it refers to reflectivity or the amount of, right? So if we go to some consumer type models, what we call 1% haze, have highly reflective surfaces, almost like a plasma did back in the day, where if it's facing a set of windows, you're going to get a highly reflective panel and may not be viewable from certain sections or certain areas of a room. So again, you've got to be careful where you would place that screen in what environment. Color accuracy is always something that comes up really important when you talk about our marketing departments and our branding and advertising, that if the displays are not spot on with certain companies and their logos and such, that can be something that could be a problem. But also, can I control that color, right? Do you have the ability to change it, make it to calibrate it, right? So that's something that a consumer television generally can't do easily. And then I talked about brightness in the center, and I go to uniformity. And one thing that consumer televisions are geared to is video, because that's what we do at home. We generally watch video. So brightness isn't always the main factor in a television, plus it's video level, right? It's about contrasts. But it also has to do with uniformity. What I mean by that is the difference between the center brightness and the edge brightness can vary. And it varies for a couple of different reasons. And one that I just learned about going through some things is when we get into Energy Star compliance, because those are very stringent rules to be Energy Star, but there's some methods in which we can do that on the consumer side by rolling off brightness on the edges, which is not noticeable in video, but it is quite evident when we use PowerPoint in the office. So something we may not see at home, we would see in the office on that. So you the difference between uniformity is more important in a commercial application, and something we'll talk about later on a lot about uniformity. So, that, and again, 24/7 operation versus 16/7, the orientation, consumer televisions aren't made to be put in portrait mode. We touched on land control or control at all. Consumer monitors may have some limited control or just a remote control or an IR, right? We have to then adapt our serial control or land control to IR. So that's an extra step. Heat protection, are they made to go in alcoves or in where there's not proper ventilation being set into the wall? So something else that we know they're going to prematurely fail, right? We know heat is not a fan of electronics. And how about certifications, right? We're all hear about Zoom today and Cisco WebEx. Do they have certifications for these types of applications? And what I mean by that, do they have the CEC protocols that they demand in those applications to be able to control the monitor, especially if we don't have a control system? But then also having control protocols like being Crestron certified. Adam, you mentioned our E-Series, even though it went from a limited control set, the 7 Series is certified by Crestron now, because now we do have some communication, two-way communication once the unit is turned on. So it's just those kinds of factors. So just kind of put a couple of pictures on there, and just you can see from what happens. I use an extreme example in the reflections. You see that it's an airport that used a protective glass overlay, but it was just tempered clear glass, and you can see the reflections, right? I can't really see the image. I can see the reflections of what's outside, so you can see that could be detrimental to the image. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that, and so that we can sort of position the NEC portfolio as it kind of builds through the E series all the way up to the P series. Next slide, Adam. So on this it's sort of kind of looking at the portfolio in a different way, and it's like a lot of us get caught, and we're talking about cost and value, and different people within our organizations will have different value of a display. And I kind of say that the cost, right? The one worried about cost is someone in purchasing, right? That just wants to watch the bottom line, but does not have to use the unit. So it isn't really, the feature set and all that is not as important, where someone like an architect or designer really is looking at it for how aesthetically it looks, or functionality to how the end user, a seasoned end user might use the display, opposed to how easy is it to use for a new user. So those would be important to someone on the user side. And then of course reliability. If you're in facilities and it's your responsibility to keep these rooms running, it's important that you have something reliable, right? So you've got to kind of base your decisions off of that. And I kind of look at this slide, and I kind of use economical, which kind of think about E series, and then performance is our P and hybrid and UN series and V series as you move up through the chain. But I did use two different cars there, right? That one is a Jetta, very economical car. It does all the great things, right? It's reliable. It gets you from point A to point B. You're not asking a lot of it in most cases, right? So it brings you a lot of value. It's low cost. It does everything it needs, and it does have a few great features. We have one here that my daughter has, right? So it's got heated seats and sunroof and night wheels and aluminum rims, I should say. And so it does have some good feature set. But if in hindsight, if I try to just think about cost and I try to take that E series, and let's just say I've been asked to bring a car to the 24 Hours of Daytona, and I bring my Jetta, I am going to be sorely disappointed because it's not going to perform the way I need it. And you can kind of relate to that. If I have lots of windows for a display and I need to run it 24/7, it's not the right product for that. But it is the right product if the demand is only that it's 16/7. So it's just kind of funny. I think what NEC and what we're trying to do here, especially with the new ME, M, and MA, and you see I put them in the slide, kind of overlaying the V and the C series where they were to show you kind of where they go to where our line is now, is that we're trying to give you a series of display that kind of builds upon itself, that you don't need to buy options or features you don't need, in a sense, save costs. So you don't have to, I don't have to sell you something more that you don't need. And we'll kind of go through that a little bit further. But so it just because we're going to feel like value engineering, right, with the way the world is today. And we all would like the most expensive products in all of our meeting rooms, but that may not be the case. So we just want to make sure in our value engineering exercises that we don't value engineer to a point where the experience for the end user or the user of a room is not getting their value, right? It's just not performing correctly. So just kind of wanted to point that out. Adam, next slide. So as we talked about, and this kind of came up, but some of we kind of want to spotlight a few of the cool features that I think we have on our displays. And right from the get-go, when you talk about the E series, and where it has the ability to wake up from power save. So it can control itself and turn itself off and turn itself on when signal returns. Very simple feature, but really a good feature for a user that walks into a room, plugs in their laptop, and all of a sudden the display turns on and they're displaying. So there's no time wasted. It's easy to use. So I think that's a nice feature that the E series brings. Next slide, Adam. We look at first detect, and now we get into, I see a list here, all products. So now everything above the E, the MA, the C, the current C, the V, all the M series, able to, when a source is automatically detected, first detect, will turn on the screen. So these are good for meeting rooms, huddle spaces, boardrooms. Again, so it's kind of an automatic. We talked about Energy Star and Power Save, that's all happening automatically. Next slide. Last detect is a really cool feature, meaning that in some instances something could already be playing, and we come into the room and we just want to, like, we have a digital signage system that's playing, but I come in and I want to connect to that monitor. When I plug in, I'm last detected, so it flips over to me. And then when I remove my input, it goes back to the last detected that's running source. So it's kind of an automatic, really kind of a cool automatic feature within there. That's kind of the part of the power save feature set. Next slide. And then you get into custom detect, and this is where we really get into the really cool feature of the new ME and MA, as well as our current series, is that we can then now put different proprieties on those inputs. So which one has priority over the other? So you can start to dictate its behavior, and it can perform as you need it to. So you can either have backup sources like we illustrated in the slide, or you could just have a meeting room that's set to be on click share, but yet when I walk in and plug into the hardwired input on the table, that would take priority over the quick share and switch inputs. And then when I release it, it would go back to a quick share or immersive or something like that. So it just, again, it gives you some functionality in the monitor that maybe some other third-party units you could purchase that could do that as well. But again, if we go into a value engineering, or to say, what can I remove from this simple huddle room, because I have a lot of these huddle rooms, where I spend a little bit more money on a monitor that actually that does the functioning of a simple control system. So I'd like to point these out. Some of these get lost in all of the spec sheets. So we're just trying to bring a few of these cool features to the forefront. Next slide, Adam. Something new on the M series. This is a really terrible pain point to have, right? We've got too many settings, which I think is a great feature of any NEC product, that there's so much you can do as far as manipulating the picture. But realizing there are so many, and that maybe not always clear to what they do, we've kind of readjusted our menu systems, but we've also adding some descriptions to actually let you know when it says backlight dimming, what does that exactly mean? So that you're going to see that on the new series to kind of help some of us through these menu options, so we're not afraid to make some changes to obviously at the end of the day create a better image. The new joystick feature, we've always had I forget if it's a 6 or 7 button system on the backside. We're actually going to change that to a joystick system so that you have less buttons to find that are behind the screen, so that you can manipulate and get through the menu systems a little bit easier. Next slide. And then this was on the MA series, right? So those that are really looking to get the most from a color standpoint, we talk about wide gamut, so the ability for this panel to produce the most colors of all of the panels. You go to the wide color gamut feature, which is in the MA and the P series. So again, that's part of that SpectraView Engine, which I'll talk about a little bit more in our video wall section. Next slide. Adam alluded to this. We talked about the ME series being counterclockwise. The MA and P add an extra little feature. It's kind of neat, but it actually adds a gyro sensor into the product, which actually will tell you that you've installed it incorrectly, right? So we'll have a no fault sensor as far as the installation and portrait for the MA and P. And then also they can also be, since it is a gyro, it can sense if the monitor has been bumped, knocked, impacted in some way, and actually could have it send out an email so that you'd actually be warned or notified that something has hit the display, run into it, not fallen off the wall, but something of that nature, right? But it would actually alert you to that there could be a possible damage on the monitor. So again, I think that's a neat feature. Next slide, Adam. So we talked about haze, right? And it's about beware of the glare. I think it's when you go into an office environment where there's so many variables. I think we have in our homes, we can control our environment where we watch the monitor. If we don't like the glare, we shut the shade. In new buildings, promoting natural light, natural sunlight, glass, bringing in lots of light, we have to be cognizant that you need to look at a high haze filter, which basically is going to limit reflections, which can be disrupting. So that's really what we feature set. The ME series will feature a low haze, and that's one of the benefit you don't get, but as you move up through, you do get the high haze filter. And on this slide here, we kind of go into the methodology to how the haze and how we control it. But basically, we went to an inner and outer haze on the new panels, and it allows us to control the outer haze, which is going to control the actual light reflection from the outside, so that when we talk about haze 25%, we're actually dispersing 25% of that light away from the eye, so we don't see it as a reflection. But you also have to be cognizant of the light emitting through the panel, that we don't defocus that. And so we want to keep a nice sharp image, and that's sort of the balance between inner haze and outer haze. And again, it's just a very important feature. Next slide. I think that's it for me, Adam. I think it's back to you.
Yep. Thanks, Dave. Great job. So really what we're going to talk about in the next few slides is just some of how this is going to transition. So from that current series that you guys are used to where we're going. So as you can see with that smaller C series, those will transition, and you'll really have a choice between the ME or the M series, depending on what feature sets or what options you need to have. And you can see some of those tentative launch dates, again, being tentative in a current situation with the coronavirus. So far, we're being told that everything is within these boundaries as far as dates go, but just know that they could push as we continue to work our way through this challenging time, as you will. So really comparing that small C series to the ME, you can kind of see some of the differences. So the haze factors, will notice connectivity. So for a long time with a lot of our products, including that small C series, we've continued to support the BGA and the RCA composite. You now see that going away. From the feedback, again, from what we're receiving from you guys, not only our consultants, architects, channel partners, end users, is really there's no need for those analog inputs anymore. So again, just trying to give you the best product possible, we're starting to eliminate some of those feature sets. So again, transition specs of that small C series, as I mentioned before, there's really two ways to go. You can go to the ME series, which would give you the same overall nits. It does reduce your runtime, but it starts to give you some feature sets like SDM, Raspberry Pi, local dimming, a lower price point. So again, some tools in the toolbox that you can utilize as you're starting to look at that. Or if you come and go, wow, C series just really isn't enough overall brightness, we can then transition to the M series, which is going to take you to that 500 nits panel. It's going to give you the high haze. It's going to maintain 24/7. But it still gives you all those feature sets that we just talked about as far as like SDM, Raspberry Pi, those types of feature sets. So again, we're trying to give you as many flexibility choices or tools in the toolbox, as I like to say, as when you're looking at your use case, you've got options. I know this is a difficult chart and I won't read it verbatim by any means, but just know that it's part of the presentation. If you need more information on it, Dave and I are here to help you, but really just to give you some timing of what you're looking at for those current models and future models. And then again, large C series is not going anywhere. So that's 75, 86, and 98. That continues through the roadmap as you see. Again, a lot of people get concerned when we start talking about that we're eliminating C series or that we're transitioning that we're going to do something with those large models, and we are not. So again, when we start talking about V series, again, same idea, same slide with those tentative launch dates. And then same idea here. With the V series, you really have 2 points that you can go to. M series is going to give you some lower price points. It's going to give you some of the feature sets, but if you say, hey, that's really not for us, or we really need those feature sets that we're used to in V series, absolutely not a problem. You can go to the MA series, maintain those feature sets that you're used to, and really gain additional feature sets that you didn't have in that V series, as we've seen in the past. So again, a little bit of an eye chart with transitions as far as what we're looking at. So more just informational for you guys as you review this past the presentation, that you've got that data in front of you. Same thing with the large V series. Again, those won't go away, being those primary 75, 86, and 98. And then, of course, that P series, as we talked about earlier, really getting a facelift. Really not this year. It's going to be the start of 2021 that you'll start to see those feature sets. But again, maintaining, it'll actually transition to a 43, a 49-inch, and then, of course, maintaining that 55-inch size. And with that, Dave, I think I'll give it back to you, my friend.
Adam, thank you. And the one thing I'll say before I get into this is that, well, we do have some notice there of delays on new product. Just kind of an FYI, we're in a great stocking position right now, as we had brought in product. So there's no product shortages at NEC at this time. The only thing we're monitoring is the launch of the new product and the ME, and MA. So I just wanted to put that caveat out there. I didn't want to have anyone have the wrong thought on that. It's just kind of a note on some of the newer products. So with that, I wanted to talk about the UN series 2nd generation. So this is our video wall series that you can see in these 3 pictures from.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but there was a question about the do all the new MEM, MA, and P series have internal speakers?
So, Adam, yes, the MEM and
Yeah, so they don't all have internal speakers. We can go back here quickly.
Yeah, the MA does not.
Correct. Yeah, sorry. I guess we didn't need to go backwards. But I'll give you a full list. I see that question. We'll follow up with that at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, but the MA does not, but does have an audio amplifier. But and also a line out, fixed or variable.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
All right. So moving, okay, so the second generation. So here's some pictures here from InfoComm, just to give you what we're talking about here in our 55 inches, what we've got displayed there. On the next slide, Adam, is the kind of the portfolio where we've have our 46-inch unit. So you're going to see this. There's eight displays, 8 different displays in the video wall portfolio. So we've got 46, a 49, and 2 versions of 55. And what the main difference in here is we talk about brightness. So there's 500 nit and 700 nit options, and I'm going to explain why that's important to some new technology we have in there. And then also it's going to relate to bezel size on the, so a 3.5 millimeter for the 46, 1.8 millimeter on the 49. The 55 is a 3.5. That's the 552 and 552V, and then the 0.88 total bezel for the UN 552S and VS, and we'll go into that a little bit. Next slide, Adam. So what are we here to talk about? Video walls have been around for a while now. It's not a new technology, but I think it just keeps getting better. The bezels are getting smaller. But what NEC has done is really, I think, gone above and beyond, and it just become the market leader that we are in this category. So out of the box is calibration at the factory level. So the idea is that every display matches on initial installation, something that was unheard of before. We'd always go. We have one of the best calibration systems in the business. What I'm saying right now is we still have that, but the idea is not to have to need that on initial install. He added the SpectraView color engine, which makes that all happen, but it also has the ability to really dial in our colors to our client specifications. Reduce bezel, so it's near seamless design. We call it a 51% decrease, right? We've gone from 1.8 to 1.88 millimeter, and the gap on the S and the VS. And then we made some improvements into that great software, the video display wall calibrator.
So Dave, just I hate to interrupt you, but a great story that you've shared in the past. Speaking of InfoComm last year, of those pictures we just looked at, how many of those walls, and I think there was a total of 4 or 5 walls at InfoComm last year, how many of those did you have to go back and calibrate because you were actually on that team that built all those walls?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I believe we had over 80 displays, and actually Gina would actually know the real number, but of all those displays, we didn't calibrate any walls at InfoComm that year with the launch of this monitor. So that was a testament that we could go to the biggest trade show in the industry, not calibrate any of our displays in the video wall, in the new video wall series, and they were spot on. So that was a great story. That's when I became a believer. So a couple more differences, right? So just the improved color management from the SpectraView Engine, right? So this is going to allow us the out of the box uniformity, right, and brightness. The improved capabilities of the video wall calibrator. We'll talk about corner adjustment and uniformity. I'll show you how that's done, and then the daisy chain functionality. So anyone who's been involved with video walls on the reseller side, I know we've got a mixed group here, but the way that we combine these, or we daisy chain them together, the functionality has changed. We actually introduced an HDMI output, which will be used for the HDMI input and also the OPS and the media player. And I think that's important because it allows us to have all displays on the same input. And then also the display port will be used for display port. So there's actually 2 lines of daisy chaining if you're using both HDMI and display port, but I'll go into a little bit more of that. And then I'll talk about tile cut. So with that, next slide. So this is what we see from our competitors out of the box. And as you see, what we get from NEC is a display that is completely calibrated, and that's really the goal with this. And I kind of put in a picture of what the SpectraView engine looks in, so you can actually look at, you can see the value that we're giving. We're giving absolute values to luminance, black, gamma, color point, X and Y for each color. So you can see that we're not just having linear controls that go from higher to lower as far as brightness and luminance and gamma. We're actually spot on, and within that, each monitor can actually be self-calibrated with the sensor. So there's a really powerful tool within that SpectraView engine. So just wanted to give you an idea of what that menu looked like. Next slide. So just that one spec page here. We kind of talked about this, the different series, but the 0.88 is it's a little bit of confusion, I think, because we got 4 55-inch, but it's a brightness level, 500 and 700, and then it's about the bezel. Otherwise, they're completely identical. So it's just a matter of finding out what's my environment, and then from a standpoint, do I want to go with the smallest bezel, or does my application not require it from viewing distance and all of those and cost? So there's some decisions to be made there. The connectivity includes HDMI 2.0, so that's going to be our UHD support. And we also have the output now, and then the display port, 2 of those and 1 output. And then we also have the OPS slot on these units, which will stay around, the OPS slot on these. But if you're familiar with the Extron D80, which is an internal card for video over IP, so that can be combined with a display, and we can do data change from there. So I think that's a great advantage option for those as well. And I think that's about it. I just kind of highlighted the inputs there. But on this slide here, you can kind of see what we're showing here on the left is this is what we would find after calibration. So after calibration, as good as our system was, we had these 3 features that we would control, which was luminance, which is the overall brightness. We want a uniformity from panel to panel. The gamma curve, which is kind of the level from black to white, and how each step is in brightness, and then also the white point. So if I have a studio application, or if I'm going to a higher, whatever, depending on what the look or my standard is, we set the white point. What we're saying now with the new series, the 2 series, out of the box, we do the luminance, the gamma, and the white point, and then we also add uniformity, and that means edge to edge within a display, and also the color gamut within each display. So you're getting 5 points of calibration out of the box, opposed to the 3 you got on site after the calibration was performed, after the install was finally was ready to be commissioned. So really the goal here is to provide the customer the best visual experience. And I think this just shows why NEC is the leader in video wall calibration. And another interesting highlight here of the SpectraView engine, and this is where I was talking about the brightness. I'm trying to tie that together. So the SpectraView engine, in essence, is our proprietary integrated color management engine. Right? This is how we manage color through this. And this feature has come in from our desktop graphics, high-end graphics desktop. So this is what they demanded for color, and that feature has been brought into the large format. But what's cool is it's sort of an active system, so that within the monitor, because we have temperature sensors on the backlight, on the panel, and also we have the amount of hours that it's being used. It can actively look at the information, and based on that, make adjustments to the backlighting to basically provide us with a uniform color over its life. And I'll show you that on the next slide. Oh yeah, here it is. I don't have it in my notes. So on this slide, basically what we're saying is that for the SpectraView engine, for that constant feedback loop to work, basically it's looking at the SpectraView engine, the display, and the internal sensors, and the lookup table, right? So we can maintain that brightness. So what we're talking about is that for this to work, if we don't want to utilize the maximum amount of brightness right out of the gate, So if you have an application that doesn't require the full 700 nits and you can set it at 500, that gives you that headroom of those 200 nits for this color engine to make those adjustments over the next 20 to 30,000 hours of its life and try to maintain a constant brightness in your video wall. So, I mean, really what we're trying to say is that we're trying to provide a constant image for a longer period of time, right? So before it would need to be recalibrated. So I think that's just another benefit of the SpectraView engine. Moving along is the one caveat to daisy chaining. The only one that's connected to the daisy chain HDMI out is HDMI 1. So even though we have HDMI 2, only HDMI 1 is used for the daisy chaining. And then same DisplayPort uses DisplayPort out. So just wanted to highlight that. And then we get into HDCP. This always comes up. It's very important when daisy chaining because the one caveat that we get is HDCP and how do we support it? And before with a DisplayPort, we really couldn't because of the chip from the in to the out and the number of keys and the loops and the hops and how it handshakes. It just wasn't stable past a couple of displays. Now with HDMI, under the worst case, which is UHD coming in, HDCP 2.2, we can do 5. So what that means to me is that a 2x2 can be HDC compliant. Anything above that, we got to look at now adding distribution amplifiers, right? So we can always run cables straight in from a distribution amplifier into the display and use tile matrix. So it's just something you want to work with your local NEC rep, and then they can certainly work with me, Adam, George, and the rest of the team to make sure that we've got a plan so there's no kind of gotchas when it comes time to add a device that would require HDCP. And I think we got one more in tile cut. So with tile cut, in the past, if we had what we see in the left-hand image is a full video in portrait, and if we displayed that on a portrait video wall, like a 2/2, we would see the whole image as it appears, right? Tile matrix would select each panel and place it in the right direction. If you only had a 1/2 and had the same content, in the old method, you'd only see half the image. With tile cut, I can actually go and take the original image, take the section that I want, and then have it display on my 2 monitors so that I just take the middle section, basically in this example. So it's kind of just another feature to help manipulate content when you're looking at video walls that are not of standard aspect ratio. Let's see. So I mentioned quarter uniformity. When you're talking about the calibrator system, that we can actually adjust monitor on the monitor from left to right on the same monitor, we can actually make some adjustments. If we see any shading in the monitor from white, we can make adjustments from 3 to 10 different locations to make sure that each monitor has uniformity. Next, and then really to round this out is the 46 as we see it is scheduled to run along, keep going throughout the year, and then the 49 we're seeing limited demand for that, so I think that's scheduled to go end of life later in this fiscal year. Obviously, that's probably been extended with the situation we're in. And then with the 55s, there's no changes there. As you can see, that those are current and will remain current throughout the fiscal year 2021. I think that's it for me, Adam.
Yep. Great job, Dave. So with that, guys, we're going to go through solution components, and give me like 10 minutes, and I think we'll have you done by 5 after the hour. So here we go. So really with solutions components, it's for us a modular strategy as we look at this of OPS that we've had and still have up to this point, our transition to SDM. We'll talk about that, our system on chip, or RPI as we call it, and then just additional accessories that we bring to the table that we feel are best of breed. So OPS of where we stand today, Intel spec, it stands for open pluggable specification, as you can see there, but there are really some limitations. It can only handle 4K, and there's some other limitations that we'll go through of why we're moving away from this OPS specification and why we're moving into the SDM specification. So SDM specification is an Intel spec as well. Smart Display Module is what it stands for. There's two formats with SDM. You get SDM-L and SDM-S. But as you can see, we can now do greater bandwidth. We can start to support that up to 8K at 60 Hertz. So now we're starting to change the game of what we're able to do as we move forward with these new series of products. Just kind of a comparison of what we're talking about for size. On the right-hand side, you see the traditional OPS slot and the card that would go into that. And then here you're also seeing what SDM-L would be. And then also you can see what SDM-S would be. And it would only take up this small portion of the card bank. So some physical connections as far as what we're looking at, again, SDM-S, SDM-L, and then you can really see from the OPS the differences. OPS required it to be in a full metal cage, where again, we started to get into limitations of how we can do heat distribution and some of the things that we can offer because of that full metal cage. With SDM-L and SDM-S, we're able to eliminate that metal cage. So again, we have some more flexibility of what components we can start to introduce. Just some specs as far as you can see. The things that I would really point out again is that resolution. SDM-L can support 8K at 60 Hertz. And then the other thing that I would really point out would just be the voltage. You can see OPS demanded 19 volts, where both SDM-L and SDM-S can operate off of 12 volts. So again, just keeping that in mind as we continue to move forward. Computing solutions. OPS is still here. We're still supporting it. These are the next 3 generations of CPUs that we're going to offer as we continue to support OPS until we transition into that SDM. So really the things that I would point out would be just really the processor variety that we're bringing to the table. We understand that everybody doesn't need a full i7 with 8 gigs of RAM, but there are a lot of our users that do. So we're offering that, as well as we can go to the other end of the spectrum and give you a lower processor, of course, at a lower cost, and it's just an AMD A8, which again, for those that are propeller heads like myself, that probably means a little bit more. But again, just giving you tools in the toolbox to be able to value engineer and to look at these based off your use case or what the need is. We're trying to give you as many tools as possible. The other thing that I would point out with both of these at the higher end is they both work on vPro and TPM. So for those that don't know what vPro and TPM is, it really gives you the capability of remoting into this device without having to use like a third-party piece of software. And the name escapes me of what we typically use, so I apologize, but remote desktop type software. So with that, you don't need those types of softwares. Also, you can actually partition these drives to where if something crucial happened and you lost a part of the drive, it lost its operating system, it lost its software, you would actually be able to remote into this OPS and repartition that drive, reload that operating system, as well as the software that you had on that partition drive, to get the system back up and running. So as we transition to SDM-L, again, not finalized, but you see that we're continuing that theme of giving you variety as far as processor speeds, overall RAM capabilities, as well as operating systems. Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 IoT, again, based off of what the use case is for that particular instance. So computing solutions, as you see, again, just some roadmap things. The one thing that I would point out here would be that OPS dock. For those that don't know, if you're using a device that doesn't have an OPS slot built into it, you can still utilize these OPS devices and accessories with no problem. That dock gives you all the same connectivity and functionality that you would have with one of our displays or one of our projectors. So as we stand today, as far as expandability, ATSC only, an IPTV tuner, HD-based receiver, SDI capability, again, huge with a lot of our broadcast customers and channel partners and consultants to be able to have that native SDI connectivity at that display or that projector. So where we're going, again, SDML, SDMS, as well as the SDM to OPS adapters. So we're, again, trying to be backwards compatible to where we don't leave anybody out to dry, so to speak, that you're not going to be able to backwards capable of these new feature sets. So NDI, which is a streaming protocol, again, supporting that SDI up to 12G as you see there. SDVOE, HD-based T, and then also the tuner that now will support both NTSC and ATSC, similar to what we have in our E-Series displays. And a huge one that we get, and I'm sure somebody will ask it here in the next few minutes, but Crestron being that D80, yes, we are in the works to create a SDM version of that D80 card so that we can continue that relationship with Crestron as we move forward. Some of the roadmap of where we're at with some of those accessory devices. And then really our answer to system on chip or Raspberry Pi. This was really our answer of giving you a SoC device that wasn't locked down. As many of you know, what we're seeing in the market, a lot of the SoC answers are very restricted. You have to use only certain applications, or you have to be limited in what you can do with that SoC. With RPI, for those that are aware of it, it is truly an open architecture. So if you want to go out and create your own software, you're free to do that. We're not putting any restrictions on this RPI whatsoever. And we're really working with some best in breed companies to develop solution sets, such as InfoBeamer, Lava Controls, Intevi, Rise Vision, just to name a few of those. But again, we really feel like this is a great tool that you guys are going to be able to utilize when you're looking to be able to do those custom type solutions. So again, just some roadmap information of where we stand with the current Raspberry Pi and IF module. And then we're even going to a second generation of that Raspberry Pi that'll give even additional horsepower than what we currently have in our RPI. NEC media players. So again, as we continue to grow the expandability and the tools that we're giving you, the NEC media player is growing its capabilities, flexibility as well. For a long time up to this point, the media player had some pretty simple capabilities. You could load to it through a network connection, or you could actually take a USB key or other type of storage media, and you could load files onto that. So we're going to maintain that capability, but we're also going to start utilizing some of the CMS partners that this can truly be an endpoint to those CMS platforms and allow you to have even greater functionality to where, again, we're not asking you to necessarily go out and buy that third-party player. We're going to give you a display with that player built into it. And again, we're partnering with those CMS manufacturers, so it's a native integration. It's not anything that we're doing that they're not aware of, so we're really working with them in lockstep. Touch overlays still continue to be of importance, and we continue to see these grow. Really know that there's two types of overlays. There's IR technology that you see on the left-hand side, and then there's PCAP technology. With that IR technology, it's got limitations, but again, depending on the use case and what you're trying to do, it can give you up to 10 points of simultaneous touch. It's a fast response time, and we can actually do that in both the clear tempered glass as well as anti-glare. When we go over to PCAP, this is much more to what you're used to with your cell phone or your tablet. The tactile feel is almost identical. We now then can support up to 80 points of touch. And really the only other thing that I would point out here is this isn't limited to single panes of glass. So if you're looking at a video wall, we can give you touch overlay capabilities for video walls as well. So it's not limited to just single panes or single displays. If you've got a 5x5 video wall, we can absolutely help you with those types of solution sets as well. Just a touch roadmap. Again, these are our standard SKUs, custom SKUs. Any of the solutions team, Dave and myself included, are happy to work with you on those. Just reach out to us. But you can see that we continue to support the touch overlay solutions as we move forward. And I'll end with Naviset. So for me, Naviset is really one of those greatest tools that we have at NEC. And for whatever reason, it's kind of like the best kept secret. So there's really two versions of Naviset. There's Naviset Administrator 2 that you see here. And for those that aren't aware of it, you can really control, monitor, and manage any of our devices that's on the network through this device. So think of it as having a virtual remote control. Anything you can do with that remote, you can do through Naviset, as well as you can set up a schedule. So if you wanted a certain display that was in, let's say, a lobby, to turn on at a certain time, go to a certain input, and then maybe later in the afternoon, it switches to another input to show different content. All of that can be done through Naviset. Naviset Administrator 2 is a free software to anyone that wants to use it. And then we've also gone to the next step, and we're starting to beta test what is called Naviset Administrator Server Edition. So for those larger applications where people want to start using them in large corporate environments or even in campus environments, Naviset Server Edition will be the answer for that. If there's anybody on the call today that would like to look at those as being potential beta users, we can absolutely have those conversations as well. There are some capabilities or some check marks that we have to do as far as pre-qualifications, but we can have those conversations offline. And with that, in 2 minutes to spare, that is my last slide. So the only other things that I'll mention, and Dave, I'll turn it back over to you, is we're continuing to do different webinar series. Dave and I, for any consultants and architects that are on the call, we continue to have our monthly cadence calls as well as our virtual happy hours. But if there are other things that you guys see as useful or that you want from the solutions team, please reach out to us. We're very open to those new ideas, and we're really here to help you be successful in your projects. So with that, Dave, I'll turn it over to you for any closing remarks, and then we'll turn it back to Gina.
All right, no, thanks, Adam. That was great. I won't keep anyone any longer. I just appreciate everyone coming out and hanging with us to kind of go over the LCD market. I think I'm really excited about the new products, and I think you will be too. So I mean, really, with that, I'll just turn it back over to Gina. But thank you, and everyone, stay safe.
Thank you, Dave and Adam. Great job. I'll leave it open for another, a few seconds, a minute. If there's any questions, that anybody thinks of. Just give it a little bit here. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Appreciate it.
What do we have on the schedule for tomorrow? We have another one tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow is collaboration.
Collaboration, 2 o'clock?
Yes, 1 p.m. Central. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm, Central. So.
Yeah, I'm East Coast. Yep.
That's with our buddy George Borden. So if you're on the call and you're interested in collaboration whatsoever, George does a great job with his presentation. It's actually a live presentation with both the Infinity board and our CV series. So if that's of interest, just reach out to us and we can get you the invite information.
I do want to mention, though, that our next CTS course is actually Monday, the 27th. how to determine the correct display technology course that's worth 1.5 RU credits. So feel free to register for that. We also do have integration projector webinar next week, as well as DV-LED.
Yeah, and then also too, right, to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, right? Because I think we're doing a lot of information is coming online. So do that with NEC Display Solutions of America.
Any other questions? So I guess we can end it now, and be safe, be well, everybody, and we'll see you on future webinars. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.